you? Welcome back to Uncensored. We are back here, and today we have a hot topic, and we're going to talk about pregnancy termination, abortion, miscarriages on board. This is a topic that I don't think has ever been talked about at this scale. And it's something that we really need to address, and we need to address it because, we have to release the stigma and the taboo and the shame around talking about this. And we really need to normalize this because the reality is that 1 out of 4 women go through this, and it's quite normal in yachting to happen. So we're coming together here as a community with 3 other women today because they're going to share their story, and they're going to share guidance in how to support each other through this journey if it ever happens where you are, or if it happens to you. So our mission is for you to get as much information and support as you need today. And we're just going to start the conversation. So today we have Courtney joining us. Hi, Courtney.
Hi.
So Courtney is actually somebody who reached out to me because her friend went through this and had a really, to say awful experience, I think is a nice word. We also have Anastasia. Hi, Anastasia.
Hi, happy to be here.
Yay. So Anastasia is also going to share with us her story because she actually went through it. She's very courageous and brave. And thank you for being here today and showing up for you and for everybody else. Your voice is the voice of many. And Belinda, she is also a former Stu, and she now is a healer and helps women with the healing and recovery process of pregnancy termination and a lot other things she does as well. And she'll talk about it. So she's here also to support us in that sense and also to share her miscarriage story with us. So thank you, Belle. Welcome.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Welcome.
We're going to go straight into stories, right? This is how we relate to each other. And Courtney, I'm going to start with you. Can you share your story with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a stewardess who is actually a really close friend of mine reach out after she had gone through this whole ordeal. And basically, she had found out that she was 14 and a half weeks pregnant by a series of sort of factors. But what had happened was she didn't realize she was pregnant because she's one of those girls that tends to miss her periods when she's stressed. And she worked in quite a stressful situation on board. And I think a big thing that what we need to highlight here is for a lot of women, they don't realize that when an egg implants, you can get spot bleeding. Now, she fell pregnant right around the time that she was due for her period. And so the first month that when she essentially fell pregnant, she mistook that as being a period. But that was actually the egg implanting. She subsequently missed her next period thinking it was stress-related, and it was only when she then missed her third period, essentially what she thought was her second, did she get a test and realized she was now 14 and a half weeks pregnant. Obviously, with everything going on in the States, at 15 weeks at this stage in Florida, there was big discussions as to whether or not she would even be able to get help. So it was a very tight timeline in which she had to get this sorted out. She had already well before decided that she didn't want to have children, and so termination was the direction in which she wanted to go in. But she was in a foreign country and she didn't know who to reach out to. And given the political climate in Florida at the time, she didn't know who she could reach out to in terms of her friends. So she took it upon herself to try and get this sorted, and she found she was based in West Palm Beach. She found a mobile clinic, and it said that it had no affiliation to the church or whatever, and all they would do is a free scan and kind of give her an age. She, at this stage, thought she was around 12 weeks, but she wasn't sure. She went to this clinic, and long story short, it ended up being affiliated with the church. It was an incredibly traumatic experience. As she came into the clinic, they had loads of little fetus models of all the different ages and different sizes. They made her listen to the heartbeat for over 5 minutes during her scan. Sorry, I can't think of what the word is now. And they actually told her the sex of the child or fetus, which was something that she did not want to know, obviously. She was in a huge state. She was really traumatized by the whole experience. She went away. They wouldn't even direct her as to where to go next. They wouldn't tell her where she could go for a safe abortion. So
And
she left this place feeling
Sorry, Courtney. I just quickly want to tell people what the place that she went actually is. Especially in America, there's things called as crisis pregnancy centers, and they pretend to help people with ending pregnancy, but they're actually not. They actually want you to do the opposite, and they could be affiliated with religious or any other people that are pro pregnancy, pro life. And the way to know if this is a center is because they won't be performing an abortion on the center. If the clinic or center does not perform an abortion, do not go to that place, because this is what is called the crisis pregnancy centers. So this is like the first, the easiest way to know if you're going to the right place or not. Okay. Continue.
Yeah, absolutely. So she then ended up going to an abortion clinic in West Palm Beach. I think it was called the Women's Center or something along those lines. And she said that the experience there was completely different. They were so welcoming, so kind, kind of took the whole emotion out of it. They offered therapy for the women. And how it works in the States is that they can't do an abortion on the same day. So you have to have a consultation, and then they'll fit you in at the soonest appointment thereafter. In her case, I think it was a couple of days after this. But she had to have the procedure. She was too far along to have the pill. You can only have the pill up to 11 weeks, I think. And she said that they knocked her out. They said that they wouldn't, but the pills did knock her out, whatever she took. And it was done fairly quickly. It was painless. She was so worried because when she had left that crisis clinic, she feared for her life, given the information that they had given her. But when she went to the actual abortion clinic, they were saying how safe it is, and actually it's safer than a pregnancy nowadays, and all these other things. One thing to note was that her partner was he was very supportive of her, but he was pro the pregnancy. And so he took her decision quite difficult, or in a bit of a difficult way. It really affected him. And she had asked the therapist at the clinic if there was anything that they could offer the men. And there is really little, unfortunately, because what they had said was it is the woman's life that is most affected by this, and it should be her choice. And it takes a real man to be able to support that and understand, because you can't have a mother who doesn't want to be a mother. And so that is something to note. There's definitely a bit of a gap in the system, but that's her story.
And how was it on board? Did people on board knew about this? Did she get the support that she needed? Did the insurance cover her?
No support on board. She didn't tell anyone. And she paid for everything out of pocket. She never even went through the insurance side of things because I think she was scared and she didn't really want to involve the vessel. She said the hardest part for her was the timing. It happened all around Mother's Day. So the timing was just awful. So from an emotional perspective, she was just in complete turmoil. And then, of course, her hormones were just all over the show. And the abortion clinic did put her onto the pill after her procedure. She hadn't been on the pill before. As far as what I gather, they had said that this will help her to regulate her hormones and just kind of give her a bit of closure and a bit more regularity, I think, or confirmation on her pregnancy status going forward, because her having that ambiguity and moving forward and trying to overcome the turmoil and make sure she was in a better place, that would help. So it wasn't just the hormones of ending the pregnancy, it was the hormones of going on to the pill thereafter as well. And then having to deal with all of this and not having really anyone to talk to. And she didn't feel like she could speak to her boyfriend all that much because he was obviously going through his own turmoil with having wanted the pregnancy.
Okay. Thank you, Courtney, for sharing that story. And I do, one of the things that you said on the story was that she didn't, everything was out of pocket because she didn't feel comfortable talking to, she didn't want to involve the vessel. And I can see why or how that could happen. But I also want to make sure that people understand, like, this is your choice. And this is also a medical procedure. And if the vessel covers such medical procedure with their insurance, you should totally be able to do that on your own. You don't even have to get the captain involved. When it comes down to policies, most of the time you call the policy, you call the insurance agent, whoever, and you file the report. You don't have to have the captain file it for you. And Anastasia, could you share your story with us?
Yes, of course. My story started end of last year and I was on a boat. Similar thing. I just thought that I was late on my period due to stress and due to a lot of place changes. We got to the Caribbean and it turned out that it was not just my period being late, but that I was pregnant. And I kind of knew, as women's bodies were, kind of also knew that I didn't want to have a child. And it was right before charter and I had told the chief stewardess and I had told the captain who did another pregnancy test to confirm. And afterwards, did the charter, which was obviously is always stressful. Got COVID during that charter as well and had to continue working. So it was just all a bit much. And the idea was that after that charter, I'd do another charter of a week. And then I would go and take care of it. And my plan was to go to Mexico to do that. Afterwards, I found out that I could also do it in the Caribbean. The second charter didn't end up happening because a lot of the crew got COVID from the guests, not just me. And so that was canceled. And after I was out of quarantine, I was called to the bridge. I talked about it, about what my plan was, and that I could also do it in St. Martin. Then however, was let go. So I was fired. And then for me, it was clear that I wanted to do it in Mexico, where they didn't do it with a pill. And I did my own research. I had no further support from the captain. I also didn't tell most of the crew. I only told the stewardess, 2 other stewardesses and the chief stew, what situation I was in. I didn't want to be judged and talked about by the rest of the crew, because I think there's still a bit of shame around that topic, which I would like to open up with this here as well, because it is okay and it happens a lot more often than we think. And I immediately contacted a friend who I knew had gone through an abortion, and sharing is the best thing that we can do. I, after that, flew to Mexico and I was gone. I was off the boat and I didn't return. I was willing to, obviously, even if I would have continued the job, I would have offered to pay it all myself and to go to Mexico if I would have had to and come back. But the coming back was unnecessary at the end of the day.
So this is also happening more than not, the firing. A lot of the stories that I got, a lot of people got fired for ridiculous reasons all of a sudden that made no sense, but it was right after they were open about the route that they wanted to go down. What would have been supportive for you, Anastasia, in your case?
I think first of all, it would have been nice to have a bit more emotional support. It's not even that I need to be taken care of and have my hand held all the time, just to have someone to talk about it, because I felt like that chief stewardess and also the captain, they were a bit uncomfortable with that. They didn't want to really have anything to do with that, because it is a tricky topic and everyone reacts differently to it. It can be very emotional, of course. And I think a big help would have been in the port, because obviously in the Caribbean, it's a small island, and it was really, really hard for me to get a hold of doctors there. I did the research all myself. I was because even though it's French and Dutch, and they're still quite, I think it's still frowned upon the topic abortion. That was quite hard. And after I was let go, I knew I didn't want to do it there because I didn't trust the doctor that I talked to. And he was just wanted to give me some pills, and I would have had to deal with everything, like all the cramps and the bleeding and the whole process. I would have been on my own on board without anyone there to help me. Really, it comes to like the doctor's side. And then I went through a painless procedure, and I was very well taken care of by a clinic in Mexico City where it is legal. Yeah, I was very lucky. Like looking back, I'm glad I did that and went through the whole process there.
You know, it's really important that you follow your instinct and your intuition, because this is what's going to really tell you if you're in the right place or not for you. I do want to mention also that taking the pill, like you said, it is safe. It is quite common, especially in France. And in a lot of other countries, to give you that if you're not over 10 weeks, because what that does is just creates kind of like a miscarriage. And also there are hotlines that actually support women that want to go through the process on their own with the pill. So when they're at home or wherever they get that emotional and medical support while they're going through, you know, the process that really takes 24 hours once you take the pills. So because not everybody wants to go through a procedure, right? They might want to take the pill, and that's okay. But if they are in a place where you didn't feel like I want to go through this alone, there are options to go through it with people supporting you from your home or hotel or wherever you feel comfortable doing that. So I just kind of wanted to mention that. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to share, Anastasia, with us?
Yeah, I think what we talked about, to have a bit of support or just know who to talk to. And if there is doctors out there, like you said, maybe to have a list and see where to reach out to, and to get a bit of information. And obviously when it comes to insurance and stuff, like I had no idea that there's even a thing concerning miscarriages or whatever. And I think most people don't really know what is covered and what's not.
Absolutely. And this is why I put together a guide, because this is one of the things that I found out people didn't know how to find the information. I found providers, I found different search websites that you can actually go and find safe clinics to do this. Also tells you the country where it's legal, when it's not, how long, you know, all that. So I have done all the homework for you. So if this ever happens, you can just reach the guy and know and feel safe and supported that there's something there guiding you through it. There's a lot of support, to be honest, out there. This is why I decided to do that for the community, because I think it's really important to make it as easy and supportive for other people to go through this process. About insurance, I have called a lot of insurance companies myself, and sadly, many of them don't cover abortion or miscarriage. But the ones that do, they have a maternity policy. So you just have to check in with whoever is your supplier, right? Insurance company. And just straight up, you can call them and be like, hey, you know, do you guys have a maternal coverage? And what does that actually cover? Can you send me the PDF so I can read it? With that, some do cover abortion. Some only cover miscarriages. So what I found out in the stories was that one of the girls was in Ribo Beach here in West Palm. I mean, anything medical in America is like ridiculously pricey. And she actually had an abortion, but the doctors were so amazing. They put it down as a medical procedure. So she could actually put it on her insurance. And it cost $3,000. So she didn't have to pay a penny, because she also had to take medical leave, and that would be out of pocket for her. Even though the hospital was kind of supported in the sense of the procedure, they didn't think medical leave was needed, which indeed is very much needed. They said, okay, you can go, but we're not going to pay for you. So she put herself in a hotel for 2 weeks out of her own money. So, you know, having the procedure covered by the boat was massively great for her finances, right? Because now she had to take out of pocket for the recovery process, which, by the way, is not just 2 weeks, but it definitely gives you that breather to kind of start coming back into your self. And then if you fully decide to come back on board, then to continue that lifestyle. Belle, can you share your story with us?
No, yeah. So my story is a little bit different. I was not on board a vessel, and I actually had a miscarriage. But So mine, it was around the start of COVID actually. So my husband and I, we both met on board a boat. We had left yachting and we were actually due to get married that year. But with COVID had decided to cancel our wedding and instead start trying for our first child. So, which we did, and we fell pregnant quite quickly, and it was very exciting. But of course, being the start of COVID, there was all of the restrictions in place with partners being able to come to appointments and, you know, all of this sort of stuff, partners being able to be present at birth, etc. So it was actually quite funny because I was originally scheduled to have my appointment on a Monday, and I called just the week before to double check because the doctor I was seeing was consulting out of the hospital clinic, and she'd also hired some private rooms to consult out of so that husbands and partners could be present for the scans, because she viewed it as very important that, you know, partners were able to be there and be part of the experience. And I must just say, given the news that we got on the day that we went for our scan, I was so grateful that my husband could actually be there. So, and also in actual fact, the baby had passed away the night before. So had I been on the Monday, we would have had a normal scan, most likely, heard the heartbeat, etc., and gone home, and then not known that I'd miscarried, and maybe I would have miscarried naturally. But I went on the Friday to our scan, and all started off well until she discovered that she couldn't hear a heartbeat. So the baby had actually, or the fetus had actually passed away, which, it was just, it was for me shocking news and something that I wasn't expecting. But I think I somehow also in my gut had known the night before something had gone wrong, because I had a strange feeling that Friday morning. And I was also given the option of either a pill or the procedure. Now, my doctor recommended the pill. I was 8 weeks pregnant at the time. So I said, okay, let me do the pill option. So I went home. We did a little bit of a ritual. I was already working as a coach at that time, and in healing, I'm a Reiki practitioner as well, and we'll talk more about that obviously later. But really thought it was important to just honor the child before I took the pill. So we actually decided to do it the next day on the Saturday. And the Saturday morning, so I was instructed on how to use the pill. So I really want to talk about this because it went wrong for me. And on the Saturday, so I was instructed to insert the pill vaginally, which is what you do, and then I had to take pills orally after that, 2 more. So it seemed like a bad period for me initially, I've got endometriosis. I was used to having painful periods. I got cramping started around about 2-3 hours after I think I took had the initial insertion. And that evening, things started to settle down. The next day, there was still some bleeding, but not a lot of bleeding. Now, the doctor had said to me, and I'm just saying this because I think it's really important for people that go through this, whether it be abortion or miscarriage, because essentially I had to take the pills like you would in an abortion. There would be a lot of bleeding. And she said, don't be alarmed by this, but there will be a lot of bleeding. So I was a bit confused because I thought, well, there's some, but it's not a lot. So I called and I had to go back in on the Monday when they did another scan, and in actual fact, the fetus was still there. So it hadn't worked. So I had to do it again, and I said to her, well, what happened? And she said, maybe you didn't insert it high enough. So she then did it in her rooms, and I went home. And it was very, very different then, the level of pain. And I have now since had a child. So I do have a baby. I have been through 38 hours of labor. And I will say that just to, I'm not saying that this will happen to everybody, and it sounds like both the ladies here had painless procedures, but for me, and we ended up calling because it was COVID. I did the procedure at home, so I just had my husband there, but I was having contractions that just went one after the other into one another, a lot of bleeding. It was very traumatic. But at the same time, I had a spiritual awakening during the process, so which was actually quite beautiful towards the very end when I just, oh, sorry, I've got bees and wasps flying around me in here with the doors open here. One with nature. But it was a traumatic experience, and until I was able to fully let go and into the experience, and that I was able to then have this sort of spiritual peace that came over me towards the end, which was really beautiful. But then ongoing after the experience, it's a process of cramping for at least 4 or 5 days. You're not yourself. And I think, and I know I have treated some and helped some women heal who have been put on board, because it is such a painful procedure. I think to ask anybody to do it on board is something that definitely should not be done. You need to be able to be in a space where you can, if you need to vocalize what you're going through, that you can vocalize and you can allow yourself to have that experience in the way that it should be, and not feel like, you've got restraints and whatnot with being on board a vessel or being around other people, etc. I was really grateful. Like, I had my husband there who was super supportive and amazing through the process. And he put like, I didn't even ask him to do the things he did, because I ended up going into such a state of like, I couldn't even really vocalize what I needed in the time with the amount of pain. When it intensified to a point where I just was in a zone, and I can only liken it to being in a zone the same as what I was when I was in labor. You just are in this zone of like this whole other primal state that you go into. And he just put on some beautiful meditation music, darkened the room, put candles on, and then it was like I had a switch where I could actually go into my body and go into myself and just allow that process to happen, and then be at peace with it. And then over the next week, just allow that grieving as my body let go and shed what it needed to shed. Just to have that space and have that time was so important.
And I do want to share that from the stories that I have heard, there have been a lot of people decide to get the actual procedure, whether that be a vacuum or whatever it is that they do, because they feel like, no, I just want it done. I don't want to go through this on the boat. And I totally understand that. But also doing that because they also think I can just go straight to work. I'm just going to do this, get on board, go on charter and do it. And they do, and they have done that, but it's been... it has been very costly to their health, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. So I just want to make sure that it doesn't matter what type of abortion you decide to get, you still need to give yourself a recovery time. And, whether that be medical leave that you can take from your boat. So check your C agreement. Usually you get 2 weeks leave, like as if you were breaking a leg, the same thing. They will be like, okay, go take it. So, and I think the more comfortable you feel with the topic, the more comfortable the other people will feel with the topic as well. Because I also feel like we're a bit of a mirror. So, and I had a girl who did actually had a peel on board, like went through the process on board. And she said that even though physically, it was intense, but I guess it was that thing of like what you said, not allowing yourself to fully embody and experience the procedure, kind of like suppressing everything because I'm in a cabin, I'm sharing a cabin, I don't want anybody to know. And this girl was on deck, she wasn't even like an interior person. The interior apparently wasn't really tight with other departments than the woman. So that's something we really need to change in the industry. And then, the men outside, she just didn't feel, comfortable with that sharing. And she also said that she was like doing whatever on deck, and she had to go to her cabin to cry like massively and crazy she said it was like constantly. And it took her 2 weeks to decide, I need to get away from the boat. And the boat said, we're going to give you a compassionate leave. And I do have to say, in this case, she felt that she had a really hard experience and challenging, and that the boat wasn't supportive. And when I told her about the other experiences, I was like, you're the silver lining for many women, because your experience was very supportive, like the whoever she told made sure that she went to a safe place, gave her compassionate leave. She didn't take it because she didn't want it. She wanted to be strong, right? And then she realized, okay, I really need to go. And then she asked for the compassionate leave. The captain said yes. They put her in a hotel in a different, they were in Tahiti, in a different island. And during those 2 weeks, obviously the universe supplied her with a coach and yoga and all this stuff. And these people that were strangers, but help her in her healing journey, because she was able to share and just put it out there and just release it. And then they obviously supported her to just see it from a different perspective and grieve the process as well, because there is a grieving process. So just wanted to share that. So what can we do to support others going through this? What's your advice on that, Belle?
Firstly, I think what was really pivotal in my experience as well was my doctor. It was so strange how I chose her. It was a female doctor, and I chose her after reading her profile and that she'd actually been through 2 miscarriages herself. So that was quite ironic. But when she delivered the news to us, she actually sat us down. She was very caring, very supportive, and she advised us to share. So that was one of the reasons we did share. Also, I think given that I am a coach and a Reiki practitioner and a healer, I was happy to be quite open about it. And I do understand a lot of people do want to put it under the covers and not deal with it. But I think the most important thing that you can do is find someone that you can share with. And if it's not somebody that's a friend or a family member, then reach out and look for support outside who you can, openly share with, who have helped others deal with this process. I think it was something, and Marion and I had we'd done some work on this prior to me even having a miscarriage years ago. We've been in contact now for years, and we have both spoken so often about the power of the womb and the energy that is held in that womb space. So as women, the womb is essentially your center, that is your center of creation, not just in the sense of creation as in a birth or a child, but it's a creation of your creative ideas, of everything, of your whole expression of life. And what happens when this area is traumatized, when you experience abortion, miscarriage, sexual trauma, if you've got menstrual issues even, and there's this trauma held in this area, it just continues to build and build. And what it does is it blocks you. It doesn't just block that creative expression, it blocks that expression of self emotionally and also sexually, because it's your womb center is essentially your sacral chakra. And so I'll just to give a little background about what I do as both a coach and with a Reiki practitioner. So Reiki is an energetic healing modality, and essentially we are all energetic beings. And traditionally it's been used to help ease your emotional pain, your physical pain, and your spiritual pain. So the way that Reiki looks at is like your physical body has an anatomy, but your energy body also has an anatomy, which is your auras and your chakras. So, and your chakras sit just outside your body. So when these get blocked or get traumatized, it just builds up. And sometimes we can't release that and we don't know how to release that. It's not like, so that's where as a Reiki practitioner, just like I'm also a physiotherapist, but it's not what I'm going to help you with. But as you would go and see a physiotherapist to deal with your physical anatomy, a Reiki practitioner or somebody can really help you deal with that energy and spiritual anatomy when that becomes blocked, to help just unblock what's going on there. And those layers, essentially, like I said, it's like your chakra and your auras that sit outside. So I think one of the ways, or the way that I've really, helped women through dealing with abortion, through dealing with menstrual issues, miscarriage, all those sorts of things, is by connecting into that energetic body and also utilizing the sound healing and guided meditation to connect with the womb and to release any of that stored energy or trauma that might be held there. And I think, like you said, Marianne, like it's very important to acknowledge that there's a grieving process. Just like when you break up with somebody, or somebody dies, there's a process that happens when there is a separation. So although and this is where I really think it's important when it's abortion or miscarriage, either or, is that a woman allows herself to have that grieving period. Just because she may not have wanted this child in that moment or ever, it's important to acknowledge that there has been an energetic separation. And so it's important to acknowledge that it needs to be a grieving process. And whether that be that and I do strongly recommend reaching out to somebody for that support in that process, or just if you don't feel comfortable with that, and you don't feel comfortable doing it, right now in the moment afterwards, give yourself that time, that space, that silence to honor and to grieve in a way that respects your body and respects what's going on in that womb space.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And I do want to say two things that came up when you were talking. One, trauma is not what happens to you, is the emotions that are suppressed in your body through that experience that you went. So when she says releasing the trauma, is really releasing those suppressed emotions. So you don't have the same energetic or even emotional, spiritual relationship to that experience the way you had it before, right? Because it was like suppressed. Now you have a open, and you're able to receive it in a different way, right? So you're able to perceive it in a different way. And another thing is, like you said, reaching out, support. There are, in the guide, there are hotlines, there are support from people that you don't know, that don't want anything but to support you, that have the knowledge and the tools, so you can reach out if you don't feel comfortable reaching out to a friend, or reaching out to a crew member, or reaching out to your partner. It doesn't matter. The point is that you reach out to somebody that is going to support you. Because if you reach out to and I don't want to say wrong person, but the person that's not going to be supportive of your choice and your decision, that may be more damaging than good. And if you may not be ready yet to support, you can start journaling, just to kind of start processing things. And then as you journal and you put it on paper and you kind of like start releasing, then you may be able to feel open to receive support in a different way.
And I think that's really important, Marianne, is the right people, because it can come across, some people are not supportive of, or they do view both miscarriage and abortion as just, miscarriage particularly, I found, that's just something that happens, like, get on with it, get over it, that sort of thing. And I think even with abortion, some people can be quite insensitive and think, well, you made that decision. So it is really important to find the right people. And when you speak about emotions, that's why the womb, not unfortunately, but ironically, the sacral chakra that I'm talking about, it's the emotional seat of the body. That's where all your emotions are stored. So it's not just, it's all held there, and to be able to release that and process it. And like Marianne said, I think journaling is an incredible way if you're not ready to speak to anybody, or unsure, or, have a little bit of shame around it. And I think just also just knowing there is nothing to be ashamed of in either scenario.
And thank you for sharing, Belle. And Anastasia, what do you feel that can be supportive of others going through this? And can you tell us a little bit about your healing and recovery process?
Yeah, I actually went through a energy healing as well as physical. That physical didn't have anything to do with the abortion, but it was my physiotherapist who was also very much, that was in Mexico. I found a brilliant healers there. She was cupping me and she said, your sacral chakra is blocked. And I was like, I knew that I had to do a lot of healing around that. And I had set up a Reiki session with the lady there as well. And when you even go through a lot of visualization and acceptance and forgiveness, that is a huge part of it, like forgiving yourself, even though you might not be religious, or you might not, you might feel in your head good about the situation or the decision that you took to have an abortion. However, like you all said, there is a grieving process, and your body has lost something. And your body doesn't know that your head made the decision to be like, all right, this is not the right time, or whatever. And so it's on a cellular level, and it's very, very important to take the time and acknowledge, and not just push through and be tough and hard. Just feel within, visualize, make peace with yourself, make peace with the decision, and highly recommend energy healing on any traumatic experience you have, or even with physical issues, because it's combined.
And I do want to mention that, this modality that we're talking about, Reiki, can also be done online. You don't have to be with the person actually there to support you in this healing modality, because it's energy, and energy is everywhere and can travel all dimensions. Courtney, do you have any information the recovery process of your friend, and maybe what she decided to do to heal herself through this? And what do you think is, what advice would you tell somebody that it's maybe trying to support somebody on board going through this process?
Yeah, absolutely. So with my friend, she kind of dealt with it herself. She's not a particularly spiritual person, but she is a very strong individual. And when she felt like she was at peace with the decision, I think that's a really big part. I think so long as you're happy with your decision, that's all that matters. And when she recognized that again, because she doubted things afterwards, but she said once she had come around to really being like, no, I made the right decision, and I didn't make a rash decision. I'm happy with where I'm at. She did open up to a couple of people, and obviously I was one of them. As a chief stewardess in the industry, I think it's been a really eye-opening experience as to how difficult it can be for girls to come forward. And so going forward, I've had chats with all of my girls. This is something we can chat about later, but I'm working with Mid-Air now to get the abortion pill on board. And my conversations with the girls is I've just let them know through me trying to get this going that I am pro-choice, and I'm very open and able to listen and be a shoulder to lean on if you ever go through this, or you have a friend that's going through this. I think as chief stewardesses, we need to really educate ourselves on this topic and make ourselves the point of contact, because I think another area that is discouraging for girls to go through these avenues that are available to us on board is because they don't want to deal with men. And as a chief stewardess, you're the head of most of the women on board. And just making yourself available and educated, I think that's really, really important.
Absolutely. And the same way we as women on board need to educate ourselves on how to support others, learn how to be non-judgmental, because you're pro-choice and that's fine. But if you're not, or you have difficult around that, can you step out of that judgment and just be supportive, be biased to whatever decision this person's making, and just like, how can I get her from A to B in an easy matter, right? Also, this is something that a lot of girls from my stories that they share, they felt very uncomfortable because their first point of contact had to be either the captain or a male, a lot of the time first officer. And they just didn't feel comfortable because it's a very vulnerable conversation and decision, because maybe you are not at peace with it yet. You know that this is the choice right now, but you haven't done the recovery process of it. I think that for whoever is listening here that has the choice to point a designated point of contact, make sure that if you have a male, there's also a female. So that whoever, needs to talk to somebody also can choose a female to do so. I also asked a lot of people about designated people ashore, and a lot of them said, yes, we had them. No, I did not reach out to them because this person is a stranger. So boats, vessels, captains, if you have a designated person ashore, make sure that you do create a relationship with the crew and this person. So when the time comes to reach out, they actually feel comfortable reaching out, because if you don't feel comfortable, and especially if it's a man, you're not going to use that resource. Things that we can do on board. I found that a lot of people on board didn't have, I think we should all have like a woman health kit, like a box, right? Where there's pregnancy tests, where there's Plan B, where there's condoms, where there's this guide that I'm gonna give you to download on the link below of the video, because I should be able to be on board in an Atlantic crossing or wherever, and I can just go to the box and get the support I need immediately without having to talk about it. Just like, this is where the box is. If you need it, you know where it is. So I think this is a very important thing to have on board. I think this is very important because a lot of the women that were not part of the interior, they felt that they couldn't talk to other women on board because they were not supported by the interior. And I know it may not be the case in all boats, but it's something that I want to bring up because it is happening and we do need to be supportive. We need to create sisterhood on board, right? Like, we need to help each other. Other things is about especially onboarding process. And the onboarding process is like when you get on board and they tell you, hey, this is your sea agreement, whatever, like this is your cabin. That's the onboarding process. So if you in your interview didn't ask about your coverage policy for insurance or the procedure of abortion or miscarriage on board, then this is the time to ask. But ideally, you want to ask these things prior to joining the vessel, because this is also going to help you understand if the people in charge are going to be supportive if this ever happens to you. This is how we also start normalizing the conversation, by asking these simple questions. Like, hey, does the boat cover maternity? And what does that entitle? What does that mean? There's a lot of things. It's not just black and white, right? So yeah, just kind of like normalizing the topic. I think is good to ask about these questions so you know what procedures are in place. The same way you should ask, what happens if I'm sexually assaulted? What happens if I'm harassed? These are things you need to know prior to entering a vessel. And if you don't, then when you enter the vessel, ask, because that way you feel more safe, you feel more supported, because you know how to handle the situation if it ever happens to you. The more we ask, the more we normalize them. So it is up to us, in a sense, to start taking action and normalizing the topic by, talking about it, right? And not being worried about what other people are going to think, because this is normal. It happens more than we want to admit. Any other advice of what people that can do before entering the boat or when they're there to get more support?
Well, there are some yachting groups and memberships that you can become a part of, such as like Nautilus, for example. I've reached out to them to find out what kind of support they offer. And I will say that it was themselves and what was that other one that we spoke about, Marion? It was GWA, I think. Yes, yeah. So, but neither of them got back to me with any information. And I think if you are a member, it's really important that we start putting pressure on these groups to have something ready to go at hand when someone asks for that kind of support.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I wasn't sure if I was going to bring it up, but you did, so I'm going to talk about it. So there's two unions, Nautilus and PYA is a professional yachting association. And if you're not a member, more than likely you're not going to get advice. So please, if you want their support, be a member. So pay for it. But I was very saddened because I pretended that I was pregnant and that I wanted an abortion just to see what support was out there from these places. And sadly, I felt like they closed the doors on me. They were like, you're not a member. We can't give you advice. Sorry. And even if you become a member, it's too late because you should have been a member prior to your issue. And I was just like, wow, this is the support that's available. Like, wow. So obviously, if you do want their support, FYI, become a member. And also, you know, I do want to say, if anybody is part of this membership, like Courtney said, put some pressure, because it seemed like for example, I called the Jack Crew Help, which is the ICE One hotline, for if you need support 24/7, and they were not informed on how to handle something like pregnancy termination. It was very clear from our conversations. They also felt a bit, because they were uninformed, they didn't feel comfortable and confident with my conversation. Their counselors never really ended up reaching out to me. I wasn't even pregnant. My hormones were fine. And I had a massive shocked. And I was just like, wow, I'm so angry and sad at the same time. And I can't even imagine what would have been for a woman who actually is pregnant and wanting to get an abortion, to reach out and then have the doors shut on her face. Like, wow. So I'm calling you out, Natulus, PYA, please be more supportive of this. We do need this. You know, if you want to support crew members in this, please, just open the doors when this conversation is being brought up. Also, like, for example, it would have been nice if Natulus tells me, hey, you're not a member, but we would love to help you. This is the free advice we can give you. But if you want some legal advice, then here's how you can join us. Here's a 10% discount. You know, like, open up, willing to receive me, right? And that wasn't the case. So I was quite saddened by that, because these are like the only support that we usually tend to go to inside the yachting and maritime industry for yachts. Obviously, as a seafarer, there may be other options that we might need to look at outside of what's been available for yachties only, because at the end, we are seafarers. And this is why I put the guide together, because there's so much support out there that doesn't have to do with the maritime industry, and it's very helpful, and they're there for you 24/7 and actually do give a shit and want to help you. So use that guide, use that support, and hopefully the one that is available for us will change in a near future and be more supportive of us, you know, and these situations. I feel complete. What do you guys have any other advice or anything you want to talk about before we wrap this up?
I was just going to add on there in regards to the chief stewardesses, and I've been working quite closely recently with a few chief stewardesses on how they can support, and I know you also do a similar thing, but on how they can then support the female crew. And so I just want to just highlight as well that as a chief stewardess, please don't feel like you're alone either. If you happen to be the person that somebody comes to and needs the support and you don't know how you can support them, reach out to people, because we're here to support. We've been through it. We know how to go, you know, how to speak to people and how to help them. It doesn't necessarily have to be like an energetic healing that that person's wanting, but just if you're a chief stewardess and you're unsure how to guide the crew members in the right direction, then reach out as well, because I've been doing a lot of support recently with chief stewardesses and how they can basically create cohesion within the department of the females. There's a lot of energy on board boats, just in general, being female, the ocean being a female energy, and how they can navigate that. And that's, you know, something that I'm really passionate about helping chief stewardesses with as well.
Absolutely, yes. I do believe that's really important. It's not just obviously who's going through that, but also if you're the point of contact for that person and you don't feel comfortable and you feel lost, reach out. You can reach out to me. The link is below. You can reach out to Belle. You know, there's the crew coach, Karine. There's other resources. So for sure, that's something very important to pinpoint. Courtney or Anastasia?
Yeah, just on my side, I touched on it earlier, but I am working with Mid-Air. They've been really, really good with seeing that there's a major gap in this side of medical care for crew. And I have a meeting on the 1st of September with the medical director of them. So we are working at getting these pools on board and trying to come up with a system that makes it accessible at least to the chief stewardess, so that girls don't necessarily have to go through dealing with the men on board if that's not the route that they want to choose. But watch the space. Anything that I learn, I'll come to you with, Marion, and then you can post it so it's available for everyone to update their kids with and know how to deal with it.
Thank you so much for that, Courtney. And this really shows that no matter who you are, where you're at, you can take action and create a massive difference for everybody, because this is not just for yachties. This is for all the seafarers, because Mid-Air is a bag that goes on many, many vessels. So, this is something so easy. All she did was pick up the phone, speak up, and then we're getting results. So no matter where you're at, Courtney is that inspiration for us to do what we know is right. And yeah, thank you, Courtney, for that. Is there anything you want to share, Anastasia, before we wrap up?
I think I just wanted to share, to just reach out, to just highlight that, because there is a lot of help out there, and I'm happy for people to reach out to me as well, just know that you are not alone, because that can just leave a very painful imprint if you go through it by yourself.
Sorry, I know that it probably doesn't need to be said, but maybe it does. Like, I think that if there is this action moving forward where the pills are going to become available on board vessels and can be given out to girls who are going through this, then if I could just have one request, would be, if there's no charter on board, please give that girl the privacy and maybe give her a guest cabin to go through this process, so that she can go through it and do it in the right manner and not feel like she's got paper thin walls, or have crew around her, so that she can, and maybe have one point of contact who's going in and checking on her, but just to have that privacy to go through that process if the boat is the only option to do that. I think if I can just make that request out there to all people on board boats, please. That would be fantastic.
And more than that, just give the person the 2 weeks.
Exactly.
Compassionately, however you want to talk about it. Like, it's a medical procedure. The person needs recovery and needs time to go through the process. The same way you give it to me if I break my arm.
Exactly.
Get on.
Give them the 2 weeks, please. Yeah, or give them the space. Just I agree 100%, because you shouldn't have to go through it in a cabin and then be expected to work the next day.
Absolutely not. And I want to finish this episode with 3 advice from the girls that I have spoken to that weren't able to be here today. Her advice would be do not be embarrassed or ashamed, and find at least one crew member you can confide in if you don't want the whole boat captain to know. Having someone else to understand a little and redirect crew members if necessary is a way off. I had an unexpected pregnancy and miscarriage, and even though I needed time for myself, I decided to do a temp Atlantic crossing because my boyfriend asked me to keep going like normal. Don't do what I did. Don't put your partner or a job before your well-being, mentally, physically, and emotionally. It is not worth it in the long run. That goes with everything. It has taken me years to put myself first before a job and not wanting to say no or let anyone down. Always saying yes in yachting needs to change. And last but not least, I wish my crew would have asked me if I was okay. Support your crew. Be there for each other is a hard thing to go through. So there you have it. Thank you, ladies, for saying yes to this and normalizing the topic and releasing the stigma around it. And for you, the listener, the community that are supporting us by taking and receiving all this information and then going out into the world and taking action. So all you need is down below the video, the guide, and the guide also has Belle's information and other healers' resources and everything you need to support or go through a process like this on board or outside a boat. Thank you, everybody.